This is Voice to Culture, a podcast for the modern day confused citizen. Should gun control be enforced, and if so, to what extent? Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode. This episode is going to be a little bit different. We're going to have a debate between the affirmative, which will be Carolyn and I, who will argue for gun control, and the opposition, Amy and Kelly, who will argue against gun control. Michelle will act as the judge of this debate, playing devil's advocate and trying to stump us with difficult questions. Disclaimer, this is just a debate and does not necessarily reflect our personal views. And honestly, this is kind of more of like a debate style Socratic seminar because debates are scary. Okay,
so what does gun control look like? And what does gun rights look like?
Okay, so for me, just like the most basic, I guess, of gun control is like obviously background checks, like more, I feel like universal, like more like federal background checks and more like restrictions, I guess.
What I think is there should be like a licensing system. Like I know like several states have like implemented that, like Connecticut, they've like implemented a licensing system in 1995, and like over the next 10 years they saw like a dramatic drop in gun homicides and gun suicides, and compared to Missouri, which had a licensing system until they got rid of it in 2007. Over the next decade, they saw like a huge spike in homicides and gun suicides. I think as well, like it's like pretty popular among like voters who like live like in a house with a gun. So like I saw the statistic, and it said that like 68% of like American voters think it's a good idea, and if you have all American voters, 77% of them agree that having a licensing system is a good idea.
People will like put the cause of some like school shooters or just like mass shootings like at mental illness, but I feel like like we should kind of like prevent that in the first place. Like look at people, like if they are seen as not fit to be able to possess a gun, then they shouldn't have the right to a gun in the first place. And like yes, like some states have that, like I think in California it's a lot more regulated, especially if you have like a criminal past and whatever, then you can't own a gun, but that's not federally mandated. I don't know. I feel like we should start like preventing the problem before it becomes a problem. Like we should start at the root. I feel like everything should start at the roots, and we should like ban. I know that the statistic is that more gun violence is from like handguns, but I still think that we should eliminate like ARs or like like automatic weapons. Like those definitely should be banned because I feel like mass shootings are the most. And I know that people are like, oh, like because so usually when like gun control conversations happen is like right after mass shootings, because mass shootings are big tragedy, and then people will be like, oh, like you're using a tragedy to like promote your agenda. But I'm like, okay, well, like when else are we gonna have these conversations? Like mass shootings are obviously tragic, and then yes, politicians.
I feel like in reference to Helen's point about how like when there's a mass shooting, people who are conservative tend to argue that it's more towards the mental health of the shooter. Like I think it has to do with the usually school shooters, they take their guns from their parents, so it's not just about like their mental health, it's also like responsibility and consideration to owning a gun. So like wait, so we're arguing like should there be guns versus there shouldn't be guns, right?
Yeah, I guess
hold on, that's actually what I'm kind of like iffy about. I don't something just
so like I feel like you could be pro gun but also be like it's common sense to like like there needs to be a license if you need to get a gun, because like obviously a kid whose brain isn't fully developed shouldn't have access to a gun. So if like it's obviously someone's right to own a weapon for self-defense, because like for example, like the patriarchy in our system obviously it comes to the point where women feel the need to carry around pepper spray and like the knuckles. There's even like instances lately, like at Target, where there's like claims of sex trafficking, and we've also seen like cars being zip tied as a sign of sex trafficking. So like oftentimes it's like, as a woman who is living in a society where women are often the victims in crimes, a gun would be very useful for self-defense. And like if your attacker has a gun, then you're more likely to survive if you also have a gun. And really what's important is if you know how to use it responsibly and you know where to keep it without any accident happening, or like your weapon falls into the wrong hands.
If you know that your perpetrator has a gun, like you would feel safer having a gun too, to like protect yourself. And according to the Pew Research Center, they found that of the nearly 70% of Americans who do not own a gun, 36% of them reported that they can see themselves owning one in the future. And I feel like personally, if I were living alone in like a big city, I would probably want a gun too to protect myself, because I know that, like, especially with the recent hate crimes against like Asian elders and Asian women, like it's just so scary out there that you can't like expect other people to protect you. You can't expect security guards to protect you, even though that's their job. You have to really look after yourself.
But I mean, a counter to that though is women are also like targeted like more by guns. Like, so if we didn't have as many guns present, then women wouldn't be as threatened, because most like crimes, especially with like women, it's a lot of like domestic violence. And so like women are more likely targeted by like their, like a husband or an ex or something like that. And also crime against women, it's like more when there is a gun like in the house. And so if there weren't a gun, then it would likely decrease. And also guns are also like self-defense. Guns aren't really used in self-defense. I think there's some statistic, I don't know the exact statistic, but yeah, it's like guns aren't actually used in self-defense. It's like a very small percentage when guns are used, like that are actually used in self-defense. And it's a lot more like crimes, I guess, like violent crimes.
Yeah, exactly. Like if we really needed the guns for protection, then why are only 0.9% of the gun usage actually from defense? Doesn't that mean that guns are the cause of violence?
Yeah, I was like, there's the statistic. I was like, I don't know what the statistic is.
We were all waiting for Michelle to speak, let's be real.
Okay, but I think there was like a point about it in Freakonomics actually. It was like, oh, do you feel safer having your kid go to a house where their parents own a gun, or do you feel more safe at a pool party? And there were like there was a statistic where it was like kids are more likely to die by drowning than they are to get shot. And I don't remember, never mind, cancel that. Cancel that.
No, wait, that's a like true statistic. I don't know like where, I don't have the book. Wait, let me pull up the book. I have it right here.
Yeah, but I remember there's a statistic like that where like it was something like that. But I was gonna be sitting here in silence for a second.
No, yeah, I think that makes a good like argument for in terms of like rhetoric and how we perceive like different ways that like homicide occurs. So dying by a gun versus like dying by drowning. This like you could also argue that, well, when you die by a gun, it's more easy to control by saying like let's ban all guns, or let's put restrictions on who can buy a gun, versus drowning. You can't ban the water. Like you can ban people for having pools, but like there's still gonna be like the oceans,
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's like intense. Like a gun is kind of like intended for either, self-defense or like to kill or for sport, versus like a pool or a car. That's not like the main intention to kill. Like okay, well, that's a little extreme, but
you buy
yeah.
a gun and like, what if you buy a gun with the intention to self-defense and not use it for violence?
Well, I mean, it's still like a use. Okay, self-defense is kind of like a branch of violence, is it not? Who knows?
Yeah.
It's like a no use of violence,
like
it's like the Uno reverse.
It's not like you would pull it willingly. You would pull it willingly on a kid, right?
Yeah, well, but pools are for like fun. This is a hard argument. I don't know, like
Michelle, you want to explain it?
oh yeah.
I think it is. I might be wrong though, but I think it's heuristic bias. I think it basically it's like it's because the media portrays it, so it's like you think you have like a larger chance of getting like killed by like as Amy said, like in the parents' house in a sleepover than drowning. Because you see it on like the news and stuff, it's more prevalent. You see like people dying from like gun shootings and stuff. Could it also be because like the media, it's more interesting to report a story that someone died from like getting shot versus dying by drowning? Because if it's like drowning, it's like, oh, you're dumb for going in the water, versus like you get shot, it's like, oh, like how unfortunate that you were there at that time that someone else took your life. Moving on. I don't know. So actually I wanted to bring back to like the whole talk about like, well, if there were no guns, then there wouldn't be any like shootings, right? So I actually want to bring up what's happening in Switzerland. So Switzerland is a country known for actually having a high like amount of the population owning guns. Like they're known for like being pro-gun, but compared to the US, whereas like the United States has nearly 12 deaths per every 100,000 people, Switzerland only has around 7. So even though they have a lot of guns, their percentage of gun violence is almost close to 0. And I was actually curious, like, why is it that like there's so much gun violence here and not so much in Switzerland? And so what I found is that they not only did they like, okay, as a concession, not only did they do like background checks and like they actually like use like common sense in their laws, they carry ammunition separately from weapons. So it's not even just like having a gun is the problem, or distributing the market of guns is a problem. It's how we treat our people and how we enforce morals and ethics in them. So it comes back to the argument of like, how do we prevent the problem before it actually happens? Because everyone wants to, stop mass shootings. Everyone wants everyone to be safe, also being able to protect themselves. But how do we actually get to that without being so tyrannical with gun control and mandating everyone to give up their guns in a way that would only incite more violence? Yeah, I find Kelly's point like really interesting, because I know that a lot of people say that like mental health is the problem, right? But like, is mental health the issue though, or is it entitlement? Because most people say that mass school shootings are due to bullying, but if that's really like the cause, why isn't the demographic of school shooters minority consistent? We don't see queer shooters or like POC shooters, like isn't that the demographic that like are often the victims of bullying due to discrimination? And like as a correlation and result, the group that suffers from poor mental health. And like additionally, in like Langman's like research, like in Langman's like research in 2015 and 2017, for example, they found that like many of the shooters weren't like bullied, and that those who were bullied rarely aimed their attacks at the particular students who had picked on them. So is it really like bullying and mental health, or is it more of like racism?
Well, first of all, it's racism. Also, Michelle went off. Like if bullying caused school shootings, then you would see a lot more like minorities, so like transgender people, like queer people, POC, but you mainly see it's like white boys. it's like white people, specifically like white males who are the like school shooters. And it's because like white males are the most like, they have the most privilege in this country. They have the most, not even in this country, everywhere, to be honest. And they're the most entitled. And so it often comes to like, I guess like them getting either it's like rejected, or like if they feel like they haven't, their expectations for their privilege, like they haven't been met. They're like, oh, like I deserve this and this, but it just kind of shows that like they feel very entitled to everything, and if they don't get something, then all of a sudden, okay, I'm gonna shoot up my school. So no, it's not like bullying, because then like you wouldn't see as many white males, you would see a lot more minorities. Oh yeah, and then like yeah, the whole like bullets, like ammunition thing, yeah, it's, I feel like gun control should also like put a either like ban or restrict a lot more like large capacity magazines. I don't know anything about guns. I think that's what they're called. Like you can't load as many like bullets into a gun. So like we should like ban more of those. yeah, there's just like it kind of just like comes back to like systemic racism and like the over policing, and like a lot of people tend to feel the need to own a gun for self-defense because like who's going to protect them if it's like obviously police can't, like there's this argument, it's like I don't know, people will ask like, okay, like so if you're in trouble, like who do you call, what do you call the cops, but like what do the cops have that you don't? Guns. So like what, you know, I don't know, it just comes to like I guess more training, but then obviously cops are corrupt, so
Well, yeah, I think that's why we should make it so that like gun control applies to authorities as well. If you look at places like Japan, their off-duty police aren't allowed to carry firearms, and most encounters with like suspects often like involve like combinations of like martial arts or like striking weapons. It's not guns. And because like the police are using like sublethal like forces on people, like the public won't like fear, or less likely to fear that they're gonna be harmed or like they're gonna be shot. So then they won't feel the need to own a firearm or like own like a gun, you know. And in contrast, you see like in the US, like the US has like a more militarized like police force that consists of like automatic weapons and like armored cars. And like as a result, you kind of see like there's like the people's like trust in them are significantly less than like those citizens in Japan, and they'll feel the need to like to want to like own like a firearm to like protect themselves from the people that are supposed to protect them. Yeah.
No, yeah, basically like that. And like as Helen said before, yeah, there's a racial bias in our police system, and like the police themselves are like systemically racist. You know, why are like unlike like white men, you know, why are black people like scared of being pulled over by the police? You know, why is it more likely that they're being pulled over? It's like these kind of factors that are like that correlate with like gun reform restrictions. You know, like if we do reform them, then wouldn't they just be targeting like those minorities in like minority populated areas, you know? I think this brings up a good court case that discusses like the legitimacy of the Second Amendment versus like individual
2008.
safe the Second Amendment versus like individual rights in terms of like the right to bear arms. So in 2010, the McDonald versus Chicago case was a landmark case that basically talked about this individual person. His name was Otis McDonald, and I think he was like a black man living in Chicago at the time when it was really unsafe, and he needed to buy a gun to obviously like protect himself. But because Chicago had like this ban on like buying guns, he couldn't buy it. He was like, you know what, that's a violation of my constitutional right, and he sued. I guess he sued, and so it became a question of, is it the states or is it the federal like government's job to enforce that individuals' rights to bear arms and to be able to protect themselves. So what I want to ask you guys is, it should it be the state's individual responsibility to determine their own gun laws, or should it be a federal, like a national level, statewide within the US, that gun control should be like solidified throughout all 50 states?
Well, like because our government is a federal system, which means that we still have national unity, but there's like power distributed to the state governments as well. That means that like state governments, like they should still abide by like federal laws, and like the federal law is like determined by the Constitution, but like other gray area matters such as like driving speeds is like something that the states should be in control of. I think in general, I think like the gun control law should be federal because the ability to own a firearm has been written in our Constitution ever since it was made. And also like guns have been branched out to be used in recreational use, like at shooting ranges or like for like hunting, even though it's not like very ethical, but like guns have been used in have been used for other purposes as well. So, and like due to the fact that it's written in the Constitution, that should mean that it should apply to all states, and it shouldn't be something that like the state would dictate. But that's just like thinking about it from the literal sense, then yes, like the whole nation should, like, guns should be legalized.
Yeah. So the Second Amendment does apply to all states, like as solidified in the case. Which I think my question is more towards like in terms of like gun control and ensuring things like licensing, like should it be up to the states to determine like what their licensing rules are, or should it be like a national like set? Because obviously like living in like near San Francisco or LA where it's like heavily populated and like crime rates are gonna be higher than somewhere in the Midwest where there's not as many people. So it kind of begs the question of like, is it the government's place to be dictating what gun control laws should be? Like, is it constitutional? I guess is what I'm asking.
Yeah, so like states with like weak gun control laws, they do suffer from more gun violence, and states with more strict gun laws, they do have less like deaths from guns. So yeah, I guess that kind of like, yes, it should be federal, because like why is that in some states with like stricter gun laws they have fewer deaths, and then in other states with weaker gun laws they have more gun violence? So like if you make it federal, then like less gun violence.
Maybe like the fact that some gun control laws in different states are so like different, but there's like so many like different levels of violence in like states, could be like to the extent or like how severe gun control laws are enforced. So I feel like that's really more of a question of how strict should gun control laws be. I feel like one thing that should be important when considering like how like strict gun control should also be like security measures. Like, and it's not just like security measures as in like how many security guards there are, but it could also be like technology, like cameras and metal detectors as well.
Yeah, like I agree, but like at the same time, like you know, like none of the shooters involved in the Sandy Hook, San Bernardino or Orlando shootings, none of them were like on the FBI watch list at the time of the respective shootings. And the Sandy Hook and San Bernardino shooters did not purchase their own weapons, and the Orlando shooter passed the background check to purchase his. So like, yeah, would these security measures like really work though? Or are they only preventing like poor people and minorities from buying a gun, while like the upper and middle classes are able to like obtain the guns?
I think I agree with that. Like, it could just make it harder to get a gun. But I think like part of that is like because of systematic racism in our country, and then the other part of that is just like making sure that guns, like again, it just like revolves around like the theme of like guns should be in the right hands. Like it should be in like, it's about responsibility when you own a firearm, because like I think it's a right to own a gun, but I think that there isn't anything wrong with having like security measures or like extra steps to make sure that someone is valid in getting their own gun. And obviously there's going to be some people who like game the system and like don't deserve to get a gun, but then they like still do. But like the more like double checking or like more like measures there are, I think like in I'm not sure which country, I think it was like in Switzerland, they like double check to see like they do like they go into someone's house and then they like double check to see like how like the firearms user is, you know. And I think like if you own a gun, then you should just be like more prepared to like, you should be like more prepared to follow through with like the precautions and the responsibilities that owning it requires.
I don't know, I feel like they should just be like strict. I don't know like what specific like checks that we could do, but I feel like just like more bans on guns in general, just because it's like we've seen it be like effective in other countries like Australia. After like a mass shooting, they like immediately like made changes to laws, and they like banned more guns, like automatic guns, and they like required licensing, and like it's been very effective, and like gun death rates and stuff have like been declining a lot, and like there hasn't been like a single mass shooting in Australia ever since And like it's been effective in other countries too. What was it? Oh yeah. And like even like Sandy Hook, like how tragic that like children died, and yet we still didn't do anything. Like gun control didn't get stricter or anything.
And like with Virginia Tech and like Parkland and so many other victims that we keep remembering as victims instead of like survivors of what should have been like the first and last. I think when you mentioned like how Australia, like because they like ban guns, it's a lot more safer now. And so like people feel safer to live there. So even as like a national concerns or economic concerns in terms of like our country, ensuring that our citizens like have and understand like how like mental health and education, how much that should be prioritized in our system before we decide to like completely ban guns is vital, because if we just ban guns like out of nowhere, again, that can come with repercussions in terms of creating like, the black market, and you know, people always find a way to still shoot up schools, unfortunately.
Prohibition.
I mean, yeah.
We've seen prohibition fail. Like they banned alcohol. What happened? Like even more
21st
like
Amendment.
smuggling and like
repeal of the alcohol tax.
And I feel like Kyle, how do you pronounce his last name? Rittenhouse?
Yeah.
Yeah, the fact that like so many people like raised money for his bail. It was like a lot of money too. It was like, how much was it? 2 million? I think it was like 2 million. Yeah, like people like raised money for him to like walk free, and like now he's like walking free still. And he was like literally like he like posed for pictures wearing a shirt. I forgot what the shirt said, but it was like stupid. And he was literally like, he's like underage, and he was like in a bar like drinking it. So, like people are like celebrating him and like calling him a hero when he killed innocent people. I don't know why, like I don't know, whatever. This doesn't really answer the conversation, but yeah, it's just like dumb.
And also like people who praise like Caitlyn Bennett. I don't know if you guys seen like her.
Oh my god. Oh good god. I was gonna bring this up actually. What is like the point? I didn't do any research on this, but I just like, I don't know, like what is the point of like open carry laws? Like why would you just walk around?
Please, not her thinking she did something.
No, but yeah, like she literally just walks around like her school like with a big ass gun. Like why is that? Why do people fight so hard for those laws, like open carry laws? I don't know. Because like in California it's like concealed carry, so you're not just like openly walking around with guns everywhere. But I've seen like states where people like, I remember also like when I forgot which state it was, but there was like a Black Lives Matter protest, and then like all these like people, Trump supporters, like walked up to them, and like they all had like guns and stuff, and it was like really scary. So I don't know, like, is it just like like why are there open carry gun laws? I don't know. Let me search it up actually. Why do people fight for them?
Like what if someone just carried a knife openly? Like that's I feel like that's the same vibes. Like you're just like you just want to like, why do you want to do that? Because you want to seem threatening, because you want to make other people feel unsafe. Like there's a difference between owning a gun and then like carrying it and like flaunting it in front of other people's faces.
I don't know.
The case was District of Columbia versus Heller in 2008. So it was also a landmark decision.
Heller.
Says that Second Amendment protects individuals' rights to keep and bear arms, like unconnected with the militia, like for purposes like self-defense. But it's not unlimited, and you have to regulate gun ownership. So yeah, basically what we're talking about today. Like, how many years later? 13.
Yeah, I don't know. What's a good wrap up? Anyone have any like closing thoughts? Okay, this wasn't very much a debate. I feel like I was just like
talking to each other.
Yeah, it's like just a regular episode.
It seems a little like a Socratic seminar. Right?
Yeah. All right, that wraps up our debate on gun control. While this debate does not necessarily reflect our personal views, we hope that you were able to learn a little bit more about multiple sides to this issue.
If you are interested in what we do and want to better understand what we're about, please check out all our socials. All ads are our voice to culture. If you like this episode, please give us a review or like and subscribe. Hit the bell icon to be notified every time we upload a video.
Thank you so much for listening.
We'll be back soon with another episode. Please stay safe and healthy, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Stop recording.
Okay.